Hello, Power Up Nation. I'm Pat Council, and let's talk about hacks. Why hacks don't work, at least why they don't work permanently. There is no such thing as taking a shortcut. And I'm talking about this on this podcast today because this is kind of our Tone It Up Tuesday. And I have talked about the fact that I had to put more time into my health and fitness because I spend a lot of time working, doing private coaching, doing group coaching, and I spend a lot of time working. So I needed to kind of balance some things out a little bit better. So one of the things and I knew better, but I was hoping that I could take a few shortcuts when it came to fitness. Okay, so don't eat as much. I mean, just eat only vegetables and cut things, calories way, way, way down. And, weight's going to come off a lot faster. And so I thought about doing that. I tried it for a little while. But of course, the body needs certain nutrients and vitamins. And so you can't get all, or at least I could not. I couldn't get all of my vitamins just from certain vegetables and eating a certain way. So I had to create more balanced meals to cater to my health and fitness. Also, the other thing is you see these different exercise programs where they say you can exercise for like 7 minutes a day. And you know what? That might work for some people, but it did not work for me because that was my way of taking a shortcut. So that's why I'm talking about the fact that hacks really don't work. Now, they can work temporarily, but here's the thing. Whenever we take shortcuts without learning what it is we need to learn and doing the specific mechanics, if you will, and following specific steps that will take us where we want to go. If we skip a few steps, we eventually are going to have to come back and get those steps. So back to the vegetable thing, just trying to eat these vegetables, breakfast, lunch, and dinner was not enough food, not enough intake. And so I got really, really hungry. So what happened? I had to actually start planning and eating well-balanced meals, not to mention the fact I didn't lose as many pounds as I thought I would. So that made me think about the fact that whenever we here's a hack that's going to help you move faster, that's going to help you get to the next level. The object of the game, I think, behind hacks is to help you learn something faster. But as far as doing it faster, skipping over certain steps, this is what happens when people work to achieve certain goals. And I think the whole concept behind not skipping certain steps is because the concept of completing a goal, or the idea of completing a goal behind completing a goal, is what you're going to learn along the way so that can contribute to your growth. It's kind of like a person who wins the lottery. So if they win the lottery, they win $1 million. And of course, there's been a lot of studies that have proven this, that usually people who win the lottery, a lot of times they end up going back to being broke or having a lot of financial problems, and the same way they did before they won the lottery. So why is that? That's because technically winning the lottery is kind of like a hack. And can you win? I imagine, yes, there have been people who have won, but that's not the issue. The point is, if you don't learn the things that you need to learn about earning money, about respecting money and not loving it, okay, because we're not supposed to fall in love with money. But you do have to respect the work that you have to do. And I've seen this throughout my business. I've seen this throughout my life with people who would take shortcuts and try and kind of beat the system so that they can earn some extra cash. And you know what? Every single one of those people ended up back at square one. Okay. Actually, some of them were a little worse than square one because not only were they broke, but they had excessive debt on top of that. So the point that I'm making is when it comes to you building more health, building better wealth, and even relationships. It's not an easy thing. And speaking of relationships, since we've talked about money, we've talked about fitness. Speaking of relationships, people think that relationships are supposed to be super easy. In other words, a guy gets with a girl and they should never, ever argue. She should never, ever have a complaint, and vice versa. He shouldn't either. It should be this heavenly thing, I guess. Actually, I'm not going to say heavenly. Let's take that back. It should be this fairy tale thing where they get into a relationship and it's true love, and to the point where they never argue and they're just romantically connected always. That is not realistic. The point is, in order to get to a really great relationship and have that connection, you must actually go through some things. And in the process of discovering what it takes to have a good relationship, sometimes your relationships, you'll have some failed relationships along the way. And for those of us, if you're like me, my parents split when I was young. Okay, so I didn't get the opportunity up until a certain point in my life to see what a healthy relationship looked like. And of course, when I moved in with my grandparents, they were much older, and they didn't argue a lot. They didn't fight a lot. They actually laughed together, kind of danced together, had fun together. And so I saw that part. And sometimes when I think my grandfather would annoy my grandmother, she'd get a little bit annoyed with him, and she'd, say something curt. And he'd just kind of tune it out instead of communicating with her. But the point that I'm making is I at least got the opportunity, I think, to see both sides of what a relationship should be like. But that did not mean that I didn't have the unhealthy things or vision in my head as to what an unhealthy relationship would look like. And so as a result, I had to go through relationships in order to learn how to have a healthy relationship. For me, that has been a journey. So life is about the journey. So when we talk about our fitness, yes, we have to work it out. We have to move. We have to eat the right foods. We have to get fresh air. And so we have to do the things that we must do in order to get to where it is we want to be. So when it comes to these hacks, the other thing about a hack and why hacks don't work is because we're learning from other people, and this is what worked for them. Now, does this mean you shouldn't take the time to hear what they have to say and learn what they have to share with you? Absolutely not. You want to learn or hear what they have to say and learn some of what they've done. But at the end of the day, you have to trust you, recognizing that perhaps the methods that you are supposed to use, that your methods are a little bit different. Now, when it comes to wealth, when it comes to health, when it comes to relationships, there's kind of a pattern that we can follow, or there are certain lessons that we can follow. Now, for me, I learned a lot of these lessons from the Bible. As a matter of fact, I want to say I learned them all from the Bible. Once I realized, wait a minute, the Bible talks about love. It talks about being patient. It talks about not being jealous. And it talks about these different things when it comes to love, which allows you to make a deeper connection with the person. When it comes to fitness, the Bible reminds us that the body is the temple that houses your soul and it houses your spirit. So that reminds me that, you know what? I can't spend all of my time working and taking care of everyone else, so to speak. And when I say taking care of, I mean constantly teaching, to make sure that people are getting what it is they need from me. I have to make sure that I get what I need from myself, if that makes sense. And the same with you. The point that I'm making is when you listen to someone, at the end of the day, you still have to trust you. And in order for you to trust yourself in the right way, it is important that you also trust God. He is the maker. And to me, the Bible is like a book of instruction. In other words, if I buy a new television, there's going to be a little booklet in there that tells me how to connect it and how to make it work if it's a smart TV and that kind of thing. And so the Bible is no different. It is that book of instruction that I can follow. Things that I did not learn growing up that I've had to learn as an adult and actually throughout my life. So it becomes something that I adopt into my life. Okay. And so as I adopt, then I will adapt to doing the right things and doing what it takes to get me to where it is I desire to be. So this is why it's important that you learn to trust yourself and that you learn to trust, I think, the instructions that God has put out here for us. I think a lot of times we want to look for these shortcuts because we think that this person knows more than us. And I've met people like that who, because it's coming from another human being, they don't trust themselves. They trust that human being more than they trust themselves because they're viewing that person as the expert. And I think there are, let's say, levels of expertise, but that does not mean that these experts can't be wrong, that these experts can't fail at certain things or provide answers that it's not a one size fit all. So this is why hacks don't work. Hacks is not a one size, it's designed for a one size fits all. If you all try this is what you're going to get. And then everybody tries it and we all get different results. So you have to really take the time to pay attention to you, figure out what works for you, learn more about who you are. When you do this and you learn to trust yourself, you are more empowered and you will actually achieve your goals a lot better. Whatever the vision is that you have for your life, it will happen for you because now you're in the mix. Your energy is wrapped around this idea that you've seen. And as a result, it becomes something that you manifest. So when we talk about hacks and doing things because the rest of the world is doing it or someone else is doing it, should you do it? I can't tell you whether to do that or not. But what I am saying is question it and see if it fits for you. See if it will work for you. But here's the caveat. There are certain rules to success and to achievement. Fitness, relationships, wealth, there are certain rules that are etched in stone. Okay. There are specific wealth principles. There are specific fitness principles. There are specific relationship principles. And I think when we don't follow those principles, we don't get the outcome that we desire. So for me, and I'm talking about me a lot on this podcast because I think it's better that I talk about me than talk about you who I don't know. Okay. But perhaps I could be a better example of what we want to pay attention to. And so as I was about to say, for me, when it comes to relationships, as I mentioned a few moments ago, there are principles that I did not see growing up. And there are principles that I had to learn. And I learned some of those principles, but I did not learn all of those principles. And so when you think about the direction that you want your life to go in, how healthy would you like to be? And you do what it takes to make that happen, you're going to get a certain kind of results that will actually empower you. When you think about the kind of wealth that you want, and you figure out what works for you. So what would work for you when it comes to getting the kind of wealth that you want? What works for you is actually doing what it is you're called to do and aligning with that and actually being open to receiving what you desire after you have done the work, after you have fallen in line and learned what it is you need to learn. See, hacks cause us to skip over things. So when we skip over things, because what we're saying when we're looking for a hack, we're saying, I don't really want to do the work. I want to get the end result and I want to get there now. And that's where the challenges, or that becomes a problem. And it becomes a problem because when you decide that you just want to get to the end, I just want the end results. What you're really saying is, I want someone else to do this for me. A lot of times there are webinars where they say, we're going to provide you with the answers to everything and we'll do it for you. And people pay for it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But here's what I am saying. If someone else does it for you, I think you're going to get a limited amount of results. Okay, you're not going to get the results that you're excited with and excited about. You're actually going to have to invest your time. You're actually going to have to invest your personal growth time, if you will. You're going to have to accept the fact that, wait a minute, I have some growing I need to do, or there's something that I need to learn. There's so many different shortcuts for perhaps making money, getting into a relationship, and becoming more fit. And I should say losing weight as opposed to becoming more fit or dropping poundage. Okay, I think in order to become fit, there are certain things you have to do. You have to eat right. And yes, I do believe you have to exercise. Okay, so there are certain things that you have to do. So the point I'm making is, when you do these things, you will find that you're going to get to the end results a lot faster. And not only will you get there faster, you're going to stay there and you're going to grow from there. Hacks will help you get there faster sometimes, but hacks also cause you to make a lot of mistakes. Hacks also cause you to take a step back because you skipped over some steps, things that you needed to know so that you could sustain yourself in whatever area you're working to sustain yourself in. You see, I remember telling someone this when they wanted to get into a relationship. Oh, I'm so in love. They knew the person, for every bit of not even 7 days. And so I said, if you go into it quickly, you're going to come out of it just as quickly. Take the time to get to know the person. And they said, well, that's not everybody. That's not the same rule for everybody. And honestly speaking, it probably isn't. I don't know. But what I do know is, even if you go into something quickly, you're still going to have to take a few steps back and start to learn about the person and learn how your connection with that person. So what am I saying after all of this? I'm explaining to you why it is important for you not to just look for the easy way. Okay. Or even if you look for the easy way, make sure that you're engaged. Make sure that you're following the steps. Make sure that you're learning something along the way. It's kind of like taking tests, and we're going to wrap up on this. In school, taking tests, to me, it's not about really learning anything. It is about just memorizing it for the moment. And I think the only things that I really remember from school are things where I was fully engaged in it. And when I became fully engaged and I liked it, I remembered it. And it was fascinating. And I carry it now all these years, and it is serving me now. When I first started this podcast, and that was around 2007, toward the end of 2007. And when I started this podcast, I have been talking about the fact that everything is energy really since then. And now it's kind of snowballed to where a lot of people are talking about that. But the point that I'm making is, one of the things I would share periodically is that I learned this in the third or fourth grade. And it was third and fourth grade. Is I had a science teacher. And one of the things that I learned was matter is neither created nor destroyed. And so I didn't quite understand it then, but I thought it was kind of cool because he did the experiment showing us, turning water to ice and explaining how things, just because matter is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes form. And so as an adult, you fast forward so many years later, a lot of years later, it still sticks in my head. And it dawned on me when I first started this podcast that in order for us to get the things that we want, we have to understand that everything is energy and it becomes a kind of matter. And it's how things vibrate. These are things, I got that foundation in third grade. So the point that I'm making is, when it comes to hacks, I'm not telling you not to use a hack. I can't tell you that. You're grown-ups. But what I am suggesting to you is that you become fully engaged in whatever your goals are. Be excited. That's what In the Mix in 2026 is all about. Become fully engaged in your goals, and take the time to understand what it is you're doing and learning some things. Okay. Because even if that person goes away, or if it's a program online and it disappears, you have a strong foundational knowledge. Not only that, when you take the time to learn some of the things, you can do your own thinking, and you're not easily led and into a direction that you didn't want to go. And you find out so many months later or so many years later that, wow, okay, I spent all this time and invested all this money in this program. This is not where I wanted to end up. So this is why hacks don't work, or I should say they don't work permanently. They will work temporarily, some of them. So with that being said, you guys, I am going to get off this podcast because guess what? Since hacks don't work, I actually have to go and do my exercise. So I want you guys to have a magnificent day and do life with power, knowing that you are built by design to win.